On this episode of the Worship Sound Guy podcast, we're talking about how to keep your production team happy, a touring professional's top 3 plugins for the perfect vocal sound, and what it's really like to run sound on Jimmy Kimmel. Let's get into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Worship Sound Guy podcast. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Borsick. How's it going, Matt?
It's going great, man. How are you?
Doing well. So we have a special guest on today. His name is Ben Ivey. He is a touring professional. He's worked with a ton of artists. Matt, you've known him for a while. Tell us a little bit about what he's done and what he's all about.
Yeah, so he's worked for several artists in the Christian space, in the R&B space, and now he is in the country space. And I'll let him share kind of who he's worked with. But I actually met Ben about 2 years ago. I had a guy. I was actually on vacation, and I had a guy scheduled to come in and mix for me while I was out. And like the Saturday before, he texted me. He was like, "Hey, I got another gig. I can't do this Sunday, but don't worry. I've got a buddy, and I'm going to take him by the church, show him everything. Like, I've got you." And I was like, we were in Mexico.
That's the scariest thing.
Like, oh man, this like is taking all of the trust that you have earned from me. So I was like, all right. So this other guy was Ben, and he crushed it. He did a great job, and he had a great time. He's like, "Man, I love this church. I'd love to come back." And so he's been coming back ever since. And when he's not on the road, I usually, when I'm getting ready to do my booking, for the next quarter, I'll send him a text and be like, "Hey, when are you in town? Do you have any Sundays you'd want to come mix?" And he comes by. We have a great time. He's a great hang. So
that's awesome. Yeah, he's got a bunch of great stories. Yeah, just super good guy. I'm pumped to let everyone get to hear from him and his experience.
Yeah, for real. Dude, so I was thinking this morning, about this, and I can't remember if we talked about this on the podcast or not, but these are just, morning, like brushing your teeth, shaving, just morning thoughts. And I was like, man, Waves, for as much as we love Waves, okay, Waves does also get a lot of hate in terms of people tend to overuse Waves. And so therefore we go, hey, you don't need Waves for a good mix. You don't, if you need Waves to make your mix good, you're a terrible engineer. All this stuff, which I'm like, there's valid points. Okay. Like I understand the sentiment, but it also just got me thinking. I'm like, you know what? I feel like that's kind of like saying like, man, if you're a real engineer, like, hey, if you're a real, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of the best metaphor here, but I was thinking like building a house. You're like, man, if you're, a real, I don't know, house builder, a contractor, whatever. Like,
you don't need a nail gun
with a hammer and nails and analog all the way. It's like, well, yeah, you could, but also like new tools, power tools were a great thing. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it just got me thinking down the street. I was like, okay, there is something to be said for overcomplicating and thinking that like Waves is going to do your job for you.
Right.
But on the flip side, I go, you know what? Learning how to use better tools or tools that are not available on your console, like people shouldn't get shamed for it. Like if you use Waves Tune, like it's okay. It's not cheating. And if you disagree, go listen to our last podcast. But like it's a tool that's available and it's worth knowing how to use it well and when to use it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you probably would have guessed that, but yeah, I think there's. I wonder where the stigma comes from when it comes to people who are like, oh yeah, Waves, like those guys, nobody needs that. If you can be a real engineer and just use what's on the console. It's like
everything on the console.
Why do you think that? And I think it's because like it reminds me of like auto-tune, and like the first couple times that people like were aware of auto-tune, it was like you like share, like it was like the share effect for a while, and then it became the T-Pain effect. And it's like, if you're using auto-tune, it sounds like T-Pain or it sounds like Cher. And it's like, no, that's not what's going on. Like there have been tuning effects in the studio for a long time. You've heard them. You didn't even know it.
They were there long before you knew about them.
Yeah. Long before it came to like public prominence. And I think the same thing is the case with Waves, where it's like people have heard it maybe misused or used in a context where it wasn't necessary, or where it was like where someone tried to use it as a crutch and was
Yeah.
unsuccessful. And so then it gets this stigma like, oh man, like, if they're using Waves, like they're probably just like that other guy that I heard using Waves a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, I hope that, maybe even like part of what we're doing is like to help change some of that stigma and be like, hey, Waves are not the enemy. It's just like, you want to know how to use it. And you want to use it appropriately and for a good reason, not just because it's there or because you want to go. The other thing is it costs money. It costs a lot of money. And I think especially in the church world, when something costs a lot of money and churches get it, it automatically is like, oh, well, imagine how many hungry people you could feed. Yeah, you guys splurge that. Oh, it's ridiculous. And so I think there's like an automatic like, oh, churches use an expensive thing. They shouldn't need that. And so I think probably particularly in the church world, there's like a stigma around that. What do you think?
True. Yeah, man. I guess I just think of it like, again, I do understand. Like, okay, honestly, I was late to the Waves party for similar reasons. I spent years as an engineer. I wouldn't say looking down on, but I was very like, okay, there are Waves guys. And I am not one of them. Like, hey, these guys need their bougie Wave setup to make them sound good. But then honestly, internally, I was like, yeah, but it like oftentimes it does sound really good. Like, I can make it sound good too, but I like, I don't. And I think it was maybe at the time as I was like growing and maturing as an engineer, it was like a chip on my shoulder. It was like, oh, how good can I make it sound without using Waves? Like, oh, I don't need, And again, I get where that thought, like, you shouldn't be sunk if you don't have Waves. I'll say that. But it's also not, I don't feel like it should be a badge of like proficiency as an engineer because it's like, it's like doing something the hard way just to say you can do it when it's like, okay, cool, good for you. But like at the end of the day, no one cares, how many plugins you're using and how you got there. At the end of the day, does it sound good or not? Now, to your point, if you have to, make a significant investment, it's worth asking, okay, is this actually going to make it that much better?
Right.
And I go, if you go back to my house analogy, like, man, if you had to build a house using, screwdriver and I'm like, yeah, sure, you could do it, but you're going to wait a decade before your house is done, Or you can use power tools and be like, yeah, cool, we're going to be done in a couple months. Like, I don't know. To me, that's how I see it. And I think it's worth, especially in modern era of mixing. I'm like, I think engineers need to learn Waves. Like, I think, and not like Waves is like, there's plenty of other good like plugin manufacturers, but Waves is like the most accessible, I would say, especially to most churches.
Yeah.
And it's like, why would you not want to have more tools available to you? Like, the point is not to use them all the time, but it's like when you get in a situation, you're like, man, this like vocal, I just can't get it sounding right. And it's like, well, hey, here's this compressor. It's modeled after this studio piece of gear that was used on such and such's vocal. Like, give that a shot. And you're like, oh my God, it's perfect. Like, never could have done that if I was just using the stuff on the console. Like, could I put a compressor on it? Sure. Would it sound good? Probably sound fine, but it's that extra.
But
like,
it wouldn't be the same. Yeah,
it wouldn't be the same.
It's like when you get to a certain point and you can tell the difference in like that last, 10% or whatever. It's like, like if I'll go back and like, I do a gig on an X32 or something like that. I'm using all internal stuff, everything, and it's just like, oh, okay, I can make all the moves to make it sound really good. Everyone's happy, but for me, I go, I hear a couple things that I just don't quite have the tools to do. Or do easily. Like, there are tons of different approaches and ways to get things. But I'm like, oh man, I can't quite, I don't have enough buses to set up my like, parallel drum bus, whatever nonsense thing that I just think is cool. And it's like, and in Waves, there's a mix knob on the API 2500. I'm like, that's really all I want.
Great. I'll do that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, sometimes there's just something that, for whatever reason, it's just easier, faster, more efficient to do it with a system like Waves. That'll get me to that result a lot faster, or with, within the limitations of the console.
Yeah. So I think my bottom line is to go, look, if you're using Waves and you depend on them to get your sound, you should not be shamed for that. They are great tools, but also, if you can't afford Waves or you're just not a Waves person, like you also shouldn't be shamed for that. But you should consider like the tools you have available. Like, are you limiting the quality of your mix because you've got a chip on your shoulder or something to that effect? You know, I don't know. Just morning thoughts with Matt.
Yep, I love that. And I think, for me too, I think an important thing is like, I don't want to shame anybody for using or not using waves. I think it is a very like, I mean, really any audio decision like that, whether it's like what kind of console are you looking, for maybe an upgrade or whatever, there's so many different great solutions out there that will all get the job done. It's just a matter of like, what's the right tool for your specific situation. I think I DM'd us on Instagram the other day who was like, hey, I'm looking at, we've outgrown we're looking to upgrade from our Avantis to something else. And I was like, ooh, okay, the Avantis, that's a pretty new console. I wonder, like, what's going on? Like, why do you feel like you've reached the limitations of this console? And so that was the question I asked him rather than like just be like, oh yeah, like I love Digico or whatever. I was like, hey, what are you running into that's like limiting you on the Avantis? And he was like, oh, okay, it's this, and this. And I was like, oh, those are completely legit reasons. And so I was like, cool. All right. At that point, you are upgrading for the right reasons. And I think it's the exact same thing with waves of like, hey, like, okay, you want waves. Why? Like be able to give a good reason.
Everybody else has it.
Right. Other than everybody else has it. Or I've got some money I'm wanting to burn.
Dude, that'd be a great idea for another episode for us is like, man, what are the right reasons to upgrade or buy new gear?
Let us know in the comments if you wanna hear a why should you upgrade episode. But speaking of which, how about let's get into our interview with Ben Ivey. It's a great conversation. I think you guys are gonna love it.
So Ben, tell me about what you're doing right now, because obviously you come to me when you're not busy, but I would love for you to share kind of what you've done over the past couple of years, and then what you're doing right now. You've done a lot of cool stuff.
So right now I work for a country artist based out of Nashville. His name's Warren Ziders, and it's like a country rock kind of thing. And
heck yeah.
So I'm front of house PM for him. And it's awesome. It's just a big old rock and roll show. A lot of fun. We're touring all over the world with this guy. I mean, every other day I look at the calendar and I go, we're doing what? It's interesting being with like a growing act. It's like a rocket ship. It's a different like mindset. But it's interesting because it correlates a lot to the church world as well. And how you get these outlandish requests last minute and you have to kind of put up or shut up or, or you have to be like, wow, all right, we have to do this, and this. The touring world is almost identical. It's just the stakes, quote unquote, seem higher, but they're not. They're the same thing, So we've had a lot of that going on lately. And then when I'm not on the road with him, because I'm pretty much doing that full time, I'll do some corporate stuff in town. I'll come see Matt a lot of times at Northlands and mix there. And that's mainly what I'm doing nowadays. I used to own a studio.
Nice.
And I did a lot of stuff with that, but then COVID kind of tanked it. So I kind of focus more on the live stuff to like try to, because I thought that's what I'm best at, I feel like. So I started doing more of that, but I still produce records and mix records from time to time when I actually,
to be honest, live is more fun.
It is more fun. Like, and I know there's like the studio guys and, whatever, and they're awesome, but like, I don't have 30 minutes to spend on a snare drum. I might have 7 minutes for a line check. So, you get, you get used to what you put yourself in. But I think sometimes I'll mix it into an oblivion in the studio and I'm like, I thought that sounded good and it was terrible. So I think the live,
we've all been there.
Yeah, I think the live is for me. But so that's mainly what I'm doing now. I've worked with a lot of different country acts over the last couple of years, kind of getting back into that kind of world. Did some stuff with Megan Maroney, Lily Rose. I did Priscilla Block for a year, which was really fun.
Oh, that's right.
That was really awesome. That was kind of like my getting back into country phase. But I've done like, Mary J. Blige, Maverick City, T-Pain, and all the hip hop people in Atlanta, like kind of all over the map, really. The past few years, it's kept my chops up.
Yeah.
I bet. I was gonna say, I feel like, especially because like you've shared a bit with me too, but I feel like crossing genres like that and just bumping from artist to artist, like you probably pick up and learn so much on the job because you're constantly having different things thrown at you, different like, you said you're doing a festival one night, a TV thing, broadcast thing the next night, and then you're like bumping all over the place. What are some of the things you feel like you've learned most recently in kind of either from when you started with Warren, or I know you were sharing a lot from your days with Priscilla, and what new things you were implementing there. What were some of the like highlights?
Man, I'd say the biggest one this year. So there's been two. I've been blessed to do a lot of really cool gigs and do a lot of really neat places and big rooms and stuff like that. But my artist for the first time this year had never headlined his own arena. And he, the venue in town that he was supposed to perform at, it got flooded. And they took everything out and they were like, oh no, like, what do we do? So they rescheduled the date and it was coming up and they're like, hey, we can't do it. Like the building's still messed up. And so the arena literally like 2 blocks over said, oh, we'll take him. And then they sold it out in like 2 days.
Heck yeah.
So
oh my gosh.
We're like, oh, we're doing another arena show, but we're headlining this time. Like, and the responsibility game was like up. And of course we had a sub out that weekend. I mean, it was just this lot of moving parts. And it ended up being like one of the best shows of the year.
That's awesome.
Hearing the roar of a big crowd, there's just something about that is really, really neat. And for him, that being his first time and all of us not kind of realizing it, that was really special. It was really, really special to be a part of that.
It's cool to be a part of, yeah.
Yeah, and you sit, I don't know about you guys, but every time I walk, they make that walk back to front of house. Like I kind of look around and it doesn't matter the venue. I do this almost every time. I kind of look around and go, oh man, I can't believe I get to do this. Like, this is really cool. Like, I really like what I do, but also like, I gotta bring it, like it's kind of like a boxing, it's kind of like a boxing match to me. Like I gotta amp myself up, but also like, I gotta bring this. Cause if not, it's gonna be, someone's gonna hear about it later,
I love having moments like that where you get to kind of pause, take it all in and be like, dang, I get to do this for a living, or even if not for a living, but just getting to be a part of cool stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know I've had multiple moments like that, and whether in churches or like when I was, before I was on staff here, just getting to be a part of stuff that you're just like, you kind of got to pinch yourself a little bit.
Yeah. And I feel like that part of the world, because like we all started in bad rooms. We all started with like, we maybe had enough microphones to mic a band, probably didn't, we're on really bad speakers and, maybe an analog board that had like dirty pots on it and stuff like that, like I did at least.
Like, wait. Yeah, I was like, were you there when I started mixing? Because that's exactly what it was.
I'm pretty much describing it, right? Yeah. So
don't sweep past 4K, whatever you do.
Yeah, and like you get those ones that like are 3-tier EQs, and all you do is just go like this, and this, because you're just basically killing all of it because there's nothing else you can do. So like I feel like especially the last year or so, I've been thinking about that in the big rooms, making that walk and going like, oh my gosh, like I cannot believe I'm here. Like, how in the world did I get here? And then I usually say, do I know how to do audio? Do I know how to do this? And then I go do the show. That's like my pre-show ritual, basically.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then the other one this year that was pretty cool, it was kind of a 2-parter. We started to do TV performances. And that was something I've never done. I just never was with an artist that was doing that. And we got to do Jimmy Kimmel.
Nice.
And that place is amazing. Like they have the best staff. Really? They have the best people. They've all, they all have all kinds of awards like everywhere on their lot. So it's a little intimidating, but they could not be kinder. And so that day we had rent backline gear, it's a TV studio. So it's not really a front of house position. So like, what do you do? Where do you go? And I went back to the broadcast room where they had this giant console. I mean, it was a Struder Vista.
Oh yeah.
So a big boy broadcast console, worth more than
Dang.
all of our churches combined, probably.
For real.
Just insane amount of inputs. I mean, and everything you could ever think of. I mean, he
Wow.
had the whole Wave suite, of course, and then he had this whole outboard wall that just made me want to just drool and take it with me. Like had a Burkasti for each vocalist, like insane, like just really cool
That's
stuff.
Nuts.
And so, like, I know this guy because I've seen his name in liner notes like half of my life. So I'm like, this guy's really good. Like, I'm just gonna sit down and like tell him like what the artist wants, and then I'm just gonna like walk out the door.
Yeah.
So long story short, it's going really well. We're having a great time. We're vibing. It's awesome. Just like two engineers, just just hanging out. And at one point, he goes, "Hey, like you really know the music. You really know what the song needs. Do you want to mix it?" And I went, "What do you mean? You just did. I don't understand." And so what they did was they recorded it, and on the second take, they reprinted what I did. So I was able to actually go back in and do all the dynamics, like for the solos and different things like that. And I'm sitting there going, like, "Is this actually happening? Like, is this happening?"
Awesome.
And he has this chair in his office that like sits up with a bunch of boxes, and he does it on purpose because he doesn't want people to get near him. And when he thinks you're cool and you're a good person and you can actually like do your job, he takes all of them off, lets you sit in the captain's chair, and then puts you up front. And that's what happened to me.
Amazing.
That's what happened to me in the middle of 40 seconds. And I was just like, and my PM was standing next to me at the time, and I'm just like, okay.
What's happening?
And I just like immediately go and like I'm just pushing faders. I'm like, let's rip this. And it was honestly like one of the coolest things ever. Like that was
cool.
That was a top 5 work moment for me, just with all the circumstances and how it is. Like people gatekeep gigs all the time, and it was union, so that was also something a little challenging. But it ended up being one of the coolest days. And honestly, I feel like we got such a great take because of having someone in the seat that knew the songs and could actually like do it correctly. Like, even though, Mac was an insane engineer and I can't even be his water boy, but because I knew the music, I was allowed to do that. And it was really cool. And, but yeah, it's been a really good year. It's been a really good year. It's been busy, but it's been really, really good.
That's so cool, dude. I love the emphasis on knowing the music, because I think that's like one of the easiest things an engineer can do is like, hey, listen to the content, learn the content. But also I feel like one of the most overlooked, and I always feel like it shows when an engineer like doesn't know the music, especially like that's applicable anywhere you go. But obviously like in church world, like you're one of the guys that always text me leading up to Sunday, like, hey, are the recordings and planning center, are those the right ones I should be listening to? And it always makes me stop and think, because I'm like, I gotta check, I gotta make sure they're right. Check with the MD and make sure, because, a lot of engineers don't do that and don't, they just show up, and it's not wrong, but like the level of excellence you can bring when you know the content and you care enough to know it. Like, I think that's such a strength, man.
Yeah. It's just one of those things, like for engineers, like most of us are data driven people. So like, if you tell me that if this microphone can do this thing for me, then I'm going to, and if it's a good thing, I'm going to replicate it and do the exact same thing. And I'm going to do it every day. Like, it's not going to change. So with that said, like whatever your how you study for your gig or whatever the event is, you need to know. Cause like, as much as we all have, audio values of like, okay, we're going to do this. I need to hit this meter at this level. Conceptually, like this is a guitar focused mix. This is a vocal forward mix, like whatever it is, we all have those things, of course. But at the same time, like if like, just an example, when I was leading worship, which was a long time ago,
come on,
there was a version of one of the Phil Wickham songs that was out. This is Amazing Grace. And the Phil Wickham version was much poppier. It had a lot of synths. It was really busy, like in the beginning. Like, it was fun. It was different, And then there was a Jeremy Riddle version that was much more chill and much more acoustic driven. And that's the one I learned. And then one week I had to go play it somewhere else, and I played the other one, and I was like, This is
Whoa.
totally
What is
different.
happening?
Yeah, it's like it's like north to south, east to west, like so different, but that was just an example of like, well, I need to know what version we're doing. Like, is there going to be this track fader with like 52 things on it? Like, is it keys focused? Like, what do you want me to do? So for me, like, especially as a contractor coming in, like we're in the service industry already. Like we already all know that, but like my job is to make sure that you get the sound that you want and what the leadership wants. That's always my goal. Like I like a lot of low end. Matt knows this, but the elders at his church sit literally right next to the subs pretty much. So he'll look at me and go,
it's true.
Take it down. And I'll go, okay. But I do it. And it's because it's his church. It's what they want. He knows the numbers he's supposed to hit because he's done the math. He's done the work. So we need to follow that. And I think a lot of people come into this with like, oh, I'm the engineer. So like, I know everything. I know what I need to do. And, basically do everything I ask. And that's just not how it works. And especially in those kind of contexts, because that's just it's like, what are we here for? No, we're here to hear the word, and we're here to sing together. So if you can't hear the vocal, like, what's the point? Like, that's a whole nother soapbox.
But my kick drum sounded huge. That's what counts, right?
Yeah. I actually did something that you talked about a while back, Johnny, about your kick and bass relationship recently that I was reading. And I actually tried something that you had mentioned at one point of I'm a big kick in person and not a kick out person. But for some reason lately, we've been going through a bunch of different kick in mics just to try it out or whatever. And I went back to like an old reliable, but I still hated how it sounded. It was still like too clippy. It was too like whatever. And I just was like, you could just turn on the fader and turn up the other one. You know what I mean? And I was went,
your other mic.
And I went like, what am I doing? And I didn't change anything. I just went like this, and I literally like, and during the sound check yesterday, I said, I figured out my kick pillow problem. And they were like, did you flip the faders? And I said, yes.
Sure did.
I felt so dumb. I felt man. But it's funny though. It just shows you that like, I don't know everything, and every day could be different. And we, as long as we have the data, like getting the songs beforehand, doing that kind of thing, if we're given that to our engineers, like we're going to set them up for success.
For sure.
That's all what we want. We don't want people to notice what we're doing. We don't care if they say our snare sounds awesome. Like we just want them to be happy, really enjoy the experience, and let everything else from that like be like an overflow of joy. You know what I mean? Like like when the pastor comes up and says, "Hey, like it sounded really good today." It's probably because it did, and it's probably because you worked your butt off to get it there. And then sometimes they're completely wrong and it sounded like trash. But most of the time it's the latter. Most of the time it's the latter, and we have to remind ourselves of those things.
No,
I
love that attitude of like service first. And like service to other people, not just your own like tastes or preferences or whatever. It's just like, because there's so many different circumstances that call for so many different approaches to get the result that is going to make everyone happy and that everyone wants to vibe with. And I think that's incredible. What other things do you feel like you've taken, like maybe, I guess either like from like maybe the touring world into church context or church context into touring? Like, are there some things you've been able to look at and go, oh yeah, that's going to work, in one of those scenarios?
Yeah, I think because in church world, we're so used to having so many people talking all the time and so many vocalists, getting them really dialed and them being the forefront of the mix all the time was such a like foundational thing for me, because it becomes a thing when I go to any live establishment that's I'm not working at and my wife's with me. She knows I'm going to be annoyed in about 10 seconds. Because you generally don't hear the vocal enough, and it's not that it's not there, but I don't hear it. You know what I mean? And I just can't get behind it. I literally can't. Like church taught me this. We're in a singing sport. So the voices aren't heard. One, the gospel isn't like, furthered with the songs that you're singing, but also like people aren't going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like if you go to any other concert, like if you go to Beyonce concert, guess what? She makes it so that everyone's singing. And guess what? That vocal is in your face. Like it couldn't be more in your face. When I saw her last year in London, I sat there with my wife and I was like, I didn't know you could get a vocal to be that loud. I did not know that was humanly possible. It was insane. I wish you two would have been there just to see what I was meaning. But like,
so fun.
Then I decided I was like, I'm just going to turn my vocal up more. What's the worst could happen? But that value started in church, and it completely transfers to the live show, because now with like social media, everybody getting out their phone moment thing. That's hard for us engineers. Like we all were like, bad phones, blah, blah, blah. But like, guess what? Like
everybody's doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know how many mixes I check just going on Instagram and the fake TikTok account I have just to like go and look? Yeah. I just use it just for viewing. I don't actually do anything else because I don't need a social media network I'm bad at.
It's true.
And so I will literally go on there and listen for it. I listen for concept. I don't listen for like tone, obviously, all the time. But like, it's such a concept thing for me, because if I know that like his vocal is sitting right where it needs to, and you can even feel some of the low end, or you can hear some low end, I'm good.
Great.
I did my job. Like I was a good steward of the signal, like that kind of thing. But all of those, that whole thought process literally started in church for me. Because what do you do with 12 singers are up there or the fourth acoustic player? What do you do about that? Like,
I'll tell you what you do about that.
You mute them. But like, what do you do? And the church gives people a lot of opportunities that would never ever have them. And
it's true.
And it's really cool because everybody gets to play, but at the same time, you can get some good time in just under the gun to know how to make it work, or how do you make a pastor's mic sound good?
Yeah.
Like,
it's true,
is that the first input that you go to when you get to your desk every day? Is it your kick drum? Like, you should probably check the pastor's mic before you check all the other ones. Like, just saying, but yeah, again, just to answer your question long, it all started at that church element. Because someone gave me the time, they gave me the space to learn, and then to give me chances to do it. Even though I was going to fail, they still gave me time to actually try it.
Yeah. We were just talking with somebody else. I forget who it was, but talking about like church engineers, like getting, really good kind of here like over the last like decade or so. And he was saying like one of the big factors of that is just like hours behind the board. There aren't many other contexts where you get to like work with a full band, week after week after week after week, and just like get your process dialed in. That's a big advantage to somebody who's like, oh man, like, once a month I get to go out to, some little bar and run sound for my friend's band. It's like, man, that's how do you compete with that?
You don't.
Yeah. So, no, it's true.
You don't. And
because like where else? Yeah.
You really don't.
I was gonna say, where else? You get like a midweek rehearsal, you get a Sunday morning sound check and a run through, and then you get a coffee break, and then it's like it's actually like it's funny. Like I feel like church audio. Then this goes to your point, Johnny, but I think maybe a decade ago it was like, oh, are you an audio guy? You're like, yeah, I work for a church, and I'm like, oh, okay, so you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like that's not the case anymore.
No.
It's really interesting, and I don't know. I don't know exactly why, but I just think collectively, like the church audiovisual world. Yeah, I'd love to hear your take on that.
Okay,
what's your thought?
So my take on that is honestly, it's because there's so much data and videos out now that you can learn anything about anything. Like I say this all the time when I'm home from the road, even if it's just this weekend run, that I need to learn this thing this week. And then 9 times out of 10, if I don't do it, it's because of life or circumstances or whatever. And then usually I go, yeah, Ben, you haven't learned that yet because you haven't wanted to learn that yet. Like, let's be real clear about this, you know?
For sure.
It's true.
And I think that's why their engineers are getting better. Like they just are, you know, they're good at going to find something about something else. Like y'all's website. Y'all's website is phenomenal. And it's so easy to use. Man. It's so easy to use. And it's little things like, hey, you want to learn how to do this in like 5 minutes? Here's the thing. And that's another huge part of it. Like, if I want to learn how to do something really intense, but I only have 10 minutes and they give me a 5-minute video and you actually tell me what's going on, you learn something.
Just break it down.
So exactly. I feel like that's a big reason of why the engineers are getting better. And I also think there's a lot of people right now, you guys included, that are modeling like how to actually train people. You know, and I know it's not completely there yet, but like it's a lot better than it used to be. Like, I mean, you can just watch your video on your X32 cheat sheet thing or whatever, and you can learn how to run that desk. You can. And everyone else has that online now, but like that didn't exist when I started. I know it didn't exist when you guys started. So like the fact that that's even around is crazy.
It's true.
Because when I was training volunteers, I used to send them video links all the time and say, hey, you know, we talked about this today. I talked about drum concepts, all that stuff. But like, if you really want to get nitty gritty, check out this video. And then they did it. And then I would know if they wanted it, if they came back. I'm like, yeah, man, like I finally figured out what a DCA was. Like, man, those are life changing. And you're like, yes, they are.
Right.
And this is why, you know, and but that's how you know you have a good team member, you know, that wants to learn how to do those things.
Lean in. No, that's great. Dude, I would love to hear from you, Ben. I know one of the things as a tech director at a church, when I have, whether it's volunteers or someone contracting like you coming into mix, obviously my goal is to like set volunteers up for the win, set anyone who's going to be up behind that desk for a win. And I know that's something that you've told me that you appreciate and that you feel like we do really well at Northlands. But we haven't talked about this in person, but I would love to hear from your perspective what kind of things make you feel set up for the win? Because I feel like for any tech directors listening, like we're always trying to get better about that. And man, how do we equip and just make it an inviting place for anyone coming in, whether it's volunteer or paid or whatever. And then for anyone who is like in that chair, what kind of things they can expect or maybe even ask for that might help them in their jobs. So I'd love to hear from you, from your perspective, what kind of things specifically coming to the church world have made you feel like you're set up well to mix.
Yeah. So the first thing is
besides the coffee, we all know.
Yes.
It starts with the coffee on the way.
That's really what it is. That's the secret.
I'll die on that.
I'm sleeping right now and I need to make coffee. Like it needs to happen. But yeah, so the biggest thing for me is, since I'm such a data person, send me the planning center thing. Send me the rundown of what the day is, because some people can't do things quickly, and they're not bad engineers and not bad people, but like you might not be ready for that gig. And if I know kind of what the day breakdown is of like how it works, I can know like, hey, on that console, totally fine, totally good. But now that I'm older and I've done this for a while, I've learned how to say no a lot better. Because I know that that's not my thing, or that's not my role, or maybe I don't know this and I don't have the time. So like that's one of the first things I ask when I'm doing something like this. And then typically I really try to see like, what is their value towards what I'm doing? You know, because if it's not that they have to have the fanciest gear, it's more so about like, do they care about what they already have? You know, like, and how can I help them? So sometimes Matt saw it the first couple times I was there. I brought my little Pelican with a bunch of little toys in it. And because I was like, hey, I don't know what they're going to have, and I like this to be this way, so I'm going to bring this just in case. Then I walked in, and it was one of the most amazing rooms I've ever been in, and I literally didn't have to do anything. But that's not the normal, obviously. You know? So the two things, like send me the PCO request so I can know what the day looks like. The second would be, I need to actually kind of know what I'm getting to music wise and that kind of thing. And like, do they care about what I'm doing? And then the third would be, if you have an input list or an output list, I kind of want to see it so I know.
Nice.
So I know what I'm getting into. Or if you have like a base file that I need to work off of, do I need to do it beforehand when I walk in? Sometimes that happens. And sometimes I get there and I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever heard. I'm going to zero out this desk. I zero out the desk because you learn that little function thing and I start over. And then sometimes, you're at Johnny's church or something and it's great too, but you don't have time to do that. So you got to work off with what you already have,
Yeah.
So it's a lot of those kind of things that really kind of lead me to go like, okay, I'll do a gig or I'll do a Sunday, and then it's like, okay, do I want to do this long term? Because there's a difference to that. So one of the reasons I love being at Northlands is because they actually take care of you. Like they're not just like in the sense of like, if there's a new input on the desk or something that I don't know about before I walk in, it's already there in patch and it's done. I don't ever have to worry about that. Now, Matt's really nice to me and he knows that I do this for a living. So he's really good about like treating me like that, like he is. But at the same time, if you have a new member coming or it's their first Sunday to mix and you say, oh, by the way, there's an orchestra coming 10 minutes before the service. Like, what do you expect? And you expect them to get mad and you expect them to be the grumpy sound guy and to do all the things that you're not supposed to do. But it's because you didn't set them up to win. Matt did this to me last year sometime. It was like Christmas time and I didn't have a lot of work and he was like, hey man, like there's a little bit more to this service today. You might want to come to a rehearsal. And that was his nice way of saying, come to rehearsal.
Please, we got elves running around the room in DPA.
Yeah, it was bonkers. Like I hadn't done a service like that in years, but I did it for Matt. And it was nuts. There was people walking around in front of the PA on headset mics and handhelds and the band, and then there was a live cello on the stage. I mean, it was just pandemonium, but it ended up being
all the
incredible.
Fun stuff.
Oh yeah, but it ended up being incredible. Like that was one of our more fun mixes. I remember that one.
Yeah, that was fun.
But the reason it worked was because Matt knew me. I trusted him. He trusted me, and then he gave me all the time and data to do my job.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of times production can get left out. And they just expect people to be miracle workers. And guess what? We're not. We can do a lot really quickly. And we got some superheroes in our world. But at the same time, we're not Superman.
Yeah.
We can do things sometimes, but it's not oh, yeah, Johnny's there. He'll figure it out. It's fine. Well, no.
Yeah.
Like 50 people just walked in. We don't have 50 microphones,
right.
Stuff like
Stuff
like that.
I think a big part of it too is like maybe there's a fundamental misunderstanding of like what it takes to accomplish whatever the person's goal, pastor, whatever their goal is. And so it's kind of, it is that sort of just like, oh, if I dream it, they can do it somehow because they're miracle workers. And sometimes I think we as techs maybe don't do a good enough job of communicating what certain things
they're afraid to
pull off. Yeah. It's like you want to be the person who's the miracle worker, but sometimes that comes back and bites you because then you get asked to do more and more miracles. Yeah. And at some point you got to be like, hey, actually, this is harder than you've known. And now I'm burned out. And you get to that point where you're just like, well, now
you haven't spoken up and said anything,
but I haven't said anything, and now I'm coming to you because I want to leave. And I think that's a big tragedy of like really. I mean, it's a lot of production environments, but I think audio and like the church world in particular is subject to that.
Yeah, because you set yourself up for this rescuer type of mentality that leads to burnout.
Yeah.
And because that's exactly what it is. If you're mixing every week, 52 weeks a year, that's a problem. You need to go sit with your wife or significant other, or you need to just go take a vacation or whatever. But it doesn't happen. And I've been the one person department before. So like, I understand what that means. But at the same time, if the culture of the church isn't set up for people to win, and they are investing in them, they are discipling them, or they're just being a really good person to the person that just walks through for the first time, that's how you know you're in the right environment. That's how you know you have the right leadership, because they care about all aspects, not just the kids, not just the youth, but the people who also walk in. Because especially at Northlands, they're all super nice. They're all really bubbly. They're all really nice people. But it doesn't matter. I've been there one time. I see somebody that I haven't seen before, or I haven't seen in like 5 months, and I go, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here! Like, you're an incredible vocalist, or you're a great monitor guy." Shout out to the monitor guys. And they might not even remember who I am, but I'm like, I know what you're doing, and I know it's insanely valuable. And the other reason is that I don't have to do it. So, so thanks. I'm a big monitor guy fan because I don't like doing monitors.
Love monitor guys. Would never want to be one.
No, I've done it. Actually, it's funny. I did a gig the other day that was a monitor gig, festival gig, and I said yes. And I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have. The festival was fine. Everybody was great. But I realized I'm like, yeah, my time back here is done. Like, I'm just, this is just not, it's fine. I can do it. Of course I can. But now it's like, no, not there.
That's part of what comes with doing this long enough is you start to learn when and where to say no. You go, I'm counting the cost, and it's not there for me.
Yeah, and it's really hard too, because there's lots of engineers that are musicians, and they have their own opinions too. Or like I'm a musician as well, but like I am not nearly good enough than all of my friends. Like, oh my goodness, they're so much better than me, and I found a role that better suited me, and it made such a difference. Like, just because I can play drums doesn't mean I'm a good drummer, but I know how to talk to that person, and I know how to get them to sound good.
Yeah.
So that's where like your value can come in. But I've also had volunteers who knew nothing about music, and they just learned to speak in frequencies, and they were really intelligent about it. So finding your lane is a big thing in our world, is in touring, but especially in church, because maybe you shouldn't be behind the desk. Or maybe you should, and you should be mixing on Wednesday nights where the youth get together, and just doing every week as much as possible behind an M32 and going, how do I figure this out?
Yeah. I really liked, I feel like this is jumping back a little bit, but what you mentioned about like learning, like what are you currently learning? What are you currently going after? I feel like that's a good challenge for everybody is like, man, what was the last new thing you learned? Or what is something that like you've either been putting off, or like, hey, like Johnny, you and I have spent a lot of time lately diving into live stream world and how to get mixes to translate. And it made me realize how much, like I've been happy enough with our stream, it's great, but it made me realize I'm like, bro, I have no idea how the Waves WLM works. I don't know what that meter, like what are LUFs, And I was like, all right, man, there's my next thing. I need to learn this stuff.
There's my YouTube video I'm going to go find.
There you go. Yeah. What the heck is a LUF?
Johnny, film it for me so I can watch it.
Exactly. 2, please.
Loudness units full scale.
But that's the thing though. Like this weekend, for example, like I installed a Waves rig recently, and I'm not a big Waves guy, and everyone knows that about me. I'm an outboard person and all that, but the artist requested it, so the artist gets it, and I had to, make it work. And of course, I knew how to use Waves, but not in a live context. And I also knew that like some people do a lot and they do too much and it fails, and you have to have all these off points and all this stuff. And I was the guy that was doing like 1 or 2 plugins on like each input, and not even all of them, like half of them. And I realized like, oh, this sounds so much better. And so of course, when the vocal chain came up, I stacked it all up, I'm going to do it. And then I realized I was doing the thing that like no one's supposed to do, with like putting too much on one and whatever. And it wasn't show yet, of course. So I was just experimenting before the sound check. And then I realized that like the simplest chain for my vocalist was the best option. Wow. It was literally 3 plugins, and the onboard compressor was the limiter. And with no additional gain. And then everything else was on the other side. And it sounded incredible. Like,
I love it.
And it sat right there. Last night, I'm not even kidding, his fader was at Unity. I touched it 2 times the entire show.
Wow. Nice.
And I was just like, that's it. That's the chain. That is it. I am not touching that one. Like, but it was because I like tried to do something different and pushed myself to get it to be a little bit better, because this audio game is all about like little percentages. Of trying to get better each week. Like I'm trying to be a better system engineer when it comes to tuning PAs and dealing with that. Like that's a huge chink in my armor. So I'm trying to get a little bit better about that every day. Or, hey, I'm going to get my vocal a little bit better, every day.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that. If we have that mentality, it's going to be better, because if we don't, then we're not going to get better.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Okay, now
Atomic Habits thing.
You got to tell us though, what was the vocal chain? What did it end up being?
Okay, I wondered if you were going to ask that. Yeah, so it was a tiny little bit of waves tune, just a tiny bit, like at 33%, really fast.
Nice.
Basically the settings I sometimes have used with Matt, actually, hilariously enough, and then I have it going to an API 2500. And I use the lead.
Oh, I know that one.
What's funny? I've never been that person that uses that plugin for a vocal. I don't know why. I have no idea. I've just used all the 52 billion others. And I did that because his producer uses that on his vocal chain. And I went, I love his vocal tone on the records. I'm sure it's good live.
Yeah.
So I threw that on there, and then I tweaked it a little bit and then saved the preset. And then I just have an F6 doing a little bit more like dynamic EQ kind of action, because he has a huge like 1 to 2K thing that he does that if you don't tame that, it's either going to squeal or it's going to be just like, it's kind of tense. So so I just kind of like dip it at that point, move the threshold up, and then kaboom, like I had it. And as soon as I did that, I just sat back, I listened on headphones, I listened on my iPhone, and I listened in the PA, and I went, whoa, like
that's it.
Wow.
Like there's nothing else I need to do. And then I have them going through like some different effects racks, but that was all outboard stuff and all that. So
nice.
But that was the simplest chain. Like, and I have the same EQ, like a similar EQ on the console. I'm actually one of those people that does a little bit of everything. Like, even though I have all the gear now, I do a lot of the work in the console, probably still 60%. Then it's like 30% in outboard land, and the other 10 or whatever is waves.
Yeah.
It's not that much, but it's just the right tool for the right input for the right job.
Yeah. I think that's the key, is like looking at it like a tool, and you're going, hey, you don't need to hammer in a nail with a drill. You just need a hammer,
And sometimes your tools,
the job done.
And sometimes your tools die. Sometimes they break. Like my Bercasti was being really noisy this weekend, and I was really annoyed about it, because everyone knows who knows me. That's my favorite thing, and I had to turn her off. Because it couldn't do it, and I was like, "What in the world? What do I do?" And so I just did the smart thing. I set up 2 vocal verbs, one short, one delay. I did that thing, and then I bussed them into the same bus. So it didn't. So I did the whole studio trick thing. So I get the timing right and all that, and then synthed it up. And I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds kind of better. What? Like, it was just blew my mind. And, when stuff doesn't work, you got to still show up. You still got to work. You still got to do your job. So, but it's funny how those moments can like make or break it for us. You know?
Yeah.
And there can also be that moment to be like, wow, that was probably our best audio show of the year. And I stayed at 97.5 dB A-weighted the whole time.
For a country rock show.
Oh,
that's
man.
It's impressive.
They were all sitting in front of the house going like, what is happening? And I'm like, I don't know, awesome. But I'm not changing this volume. This is fantastic. Like, this is so pleasing to listen to, because it's not, blaring me out. Loud isn't always better. So,
yep.
It's true.
That's the truth.
Dude, thanks much for coming on, man. This has been great.
Been so fun.
Yeah, guys, for sure. Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
Dude, of course.
Where can people find you? Like, are you on social media? Where are you at?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram. It's Ben Ivey Productions. It's not private or anything, so they can just follow me there. That's where I'm the most active.
Nice.
It's usually the same view though every day. Sorry for the content that's not cool. But yeah,
don't apologize.
But that's where
gear picks all day.
Yeah, but that's where it is. Yeah.
No, that's great. That's great, man.
Awesome.
Love it. Awesome.
Hey, if you can find his fake TikTok, we'll give you a free course. How about that?
Everybody go find it.
Yeah. I literally only use that to just view what my artist sees. That's all I do. It's sad, but that's the world we're in.
No, that's great. That's great.
That's super cool, man.
Also, Ben is in our insiders group. So if you guys have any questions for him, obviously hit him up directly on Instagram. But we got Ben and other guys like him that are working out in the industry, doing a bunch of cool stuff in our insiders group. And we'd love to hear from you in there too. So
for sure.
Totally. I got that app on my phone. No problem.
Perfect.
Great. Cool. All right.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, y'all.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. It's been so fun.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right. See you later.
Bye. Sweet.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Thanks,
that was
guys.
Great, man.
I didn't really have an agenda. So I was like, oh, no, here we go.
No.
Neither do we with this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just like, man, I just like good conversation with good folks,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I also could talk about so many things in audio. Like Matt and I have a little therapy audio session, I think, every time we hang out.
Yep. Like, it's great.
About weird stuff we didn't know or learned, or this idea we had that was great, that was terrible, you know.
Yep.
That's a common thing.
That's awesome.
It's funny you brought up the 2500 thing, and I've actually never used it on a vocal. And I think about that, but we do like a weekly group call in the group, and so I was just going through our the drum stuff in my template, and it was like, I mean, I've got 2500 on literally everything.
It was literally every channel.
It's kind of funny. And then you said that, and I was like, I've never put it on the vocals. I'm about to put it on the vocals.
Maybe I just put it everywhere.
Yeah, it just popped. Like,
I love that thing, man. I freaking love it.
And I was 200 feet away at a festival.
Wow.
And I heard him clear as day. And it was just on the thrust too. And it was just on the 80-foot thrust. Yes, I said 80-foot thrust. 80. And I just went, I just sat there just going like, what is real right now? Like, I don't, okay, don't touch it, Ben. Like, don't.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right? When you find the thing that works, it's just like, oh, just leave it right there. Just let it do its thing.
Like, don't be the dumb guy.
Like, how are you doing that? You're like, I have no idea. Just don't touch it.
Cool. Don't talk about it.
Especially
in the moment.
Literally.
Especially in the moment.
For real.
You know, when you can get up from your console and you can take a video at front of house just to show the artist at the end of the night, that's when you know you're doing a good idea.
Bro.
It's a good show.
Yeah, for sure.
You take your hands off the console for a minute.
And on a JBL rig, no less. So.
Whoa.
Dang.
That's never happened before.
Yeah, hot take. The A12s and the A8s are really good.
Okay.
Really?
They are really good.
Not heard them.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, they still have the brightness thing, of course, but if you know how to tune them, dude.
Yeah.
They can put some energy out, and they're wide too, so you don't need as many front fills if it's deployed right. So it happens a lot, and my mix is bright obviously because it's country music right now, but man, it is awesome. I was pleasantly surprised again.
Yeah, that's fun.
I don't want to talk about a bunch that I'm like a proponent of this, but man, I'll tell you, I'm getting impressed by them.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like that's been the deal with JBL. Though, is like they're bang for the buck, and they just don't sound good like initially. But if you know, like, you can make them sound good, and if you got someone who knows, like, that's how I feel with Myer. Is like Myer stuff I know can sound great. I've just heard it not sound great more often than not. And then I've been on some Myer systems that are some of the best sounding systems I've ever heard. And I'm like, it all comes down to the tuning. Like, you got to have someone who knows what they're doing with Myer.
It was funny. 100%. We had CMA Fest, and they had a Myer rig in the thing that we came and did. And I don't know if you guys have ever done that gig, but that's like a throw and go festival style where you don't have a file. You have to work on the file that they give you. And then you build a mix in 10 minutes. Okay. And nice. And Ryan Shelton from Digico was sitting right next to me. And then the Myer guys were there, and I was like, great.
Nice.
Like, awesome. Sick. Can you not listen? Can you go get a drink right now? You know? And
you give him cash to go get a drink.
Yeah. And the first thing I noticed when I'm listening to the two bands before me is that it's the brightest thing I've ever heard in my life. I was like, this is dog crap. Like, we can't do this. And I immediately was like, hey guys, you want to do something about 4 to 8K? You just want to go like, for me? Like, appreciate it. Because if not, I'm just going to kill everyone. You know? but it's all because we knew what we were doing. We knew the goal and whatever, but oh man, it was so bad. And then Ryan sent me an email. He's like, hey man, best mix of the day by far. Thanks.
Let's go.
Awesome.
And I was just like,
awesome.
And I like sent it in the group.
Yes.
I sent it in the group chat and I was like, guys, we got a stamp of approval. And they were like, yo. And I was like, that's what's up. Like that made me feel good.
Awesome.
Yeah,
for real.
It was awesome.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
Such a
sure.
good dude.
Well, shoot, if you guys are in Atlanta at all, make sure to hit us up.
Yeah, please let us know. That'd be so fun to come out.
Come hang.
We actually are.
Yeah.
We're doing a big tour with Jelly Roll in the fall. We're on.
Oh, that's right. You told me that.
Yeah. So we're direct support for him for all like 50 dates, and we gotta stop in Atlanta. We gotta stop at State Farm.
Nice.
Heck
So
yeah, man.
yeah, we'll be on an Adamson rig. So that'll be fun.
Okay.
Very nice.
Cool.
Yeah, that was their choice. So I'm kind of excited to do that again.
Dude.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
For great things.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. You guys can sit in front of house with other 52 people and judge me harshly, and I will take your listen. I'll
make you a deal. I'll throw Skittles at you, but you can choose the color. Okay.
Perfect. That's awesome. And then when I'm terrible, I'll just be like, hey, this guy, he's gonna take over. Johnny and I are going to go to the catering, and that's going to be up here. Just
let Matt take it. Just let Matt take it. We'll get drinks.
No, but the artist be like, it sounded better today.
So funny. Dude, this was awesome.
Yeah, appreciate
Ben,
you guys.
I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, appreciate you
dude.
guys.
Thank you so much.